All right, shut that off. All right. And we're live. That's loud. First live feed of the 11th OVC. So welcome, appreciate you guys watching. One of the things we wanted to open up with is actually the famous movie of Gettysburg. So with me right now we have Brandon right here.
Hello.
And so basically, what's your feel on Gettysburg?
I think it's an awesome movie. So let that be confirmed. I am a big fan of the movie Gettysburg. But there might be some stuff to it that is not entirely authentic.
Like what?
Well, we'll get to that in a little while. But that's what this is all about.
Right.
No, I do think, though, that we should note that while it may not be the most authentic film, it is also a film, so it's entertainment based. It's not going to be that authentic.
Yeah.
To a certain degree. It all comes down to how much money you want to put into the film versus, how authentic all the rest of us history nerds are going to be having a good time with it. But, man, this is really hard with, an echo that's delayed two seconds. But, so anyway, I think that it's a great film, but it also inspired a lot of us to get started in the hobby and what we're doing today. And it's a great, it gives you the good feels and enough visuals and action, and the music obviously helps a lot too. But it's always good when you have a soundtrack.
Obviously makes a big difference. Yeah, exactly.
But it inspires you to start somewhere.
Yeah. So one of the things, the reason I picked this is because as in 93, I think I was in 5th grade, it came out, and the first movie that made me interested in the Civil War, actually made me interested in the history in general, was first the movie Dances with Wolves. When I saw it. Ironically, not the Indian Wars side of thing, but the opening scene of the Civil War. I remember asking my dad, what is that? What war is that? Because I was already interested in military history, more of Vietnam. I guess the modern stuff. Because this is 93. I don't know when Dances with Wolves came out. Maybe in 91, 92, something like that. But I was usually drawn to the Iraq or the Desert Shield, Gulf War. I was really interested in that when that happened. And then that movie Dance with the Wolves comes out, and I loved whatever that opening scene was, and then I learned it was the Civil War, and then just not too long afterward, Gettysburg shows up. And so as a kid, I love the movie Gettysburg. That movie actually allowed me to realize that history was personal. Now, it's stupid to think that or say that now, because especially as historians as a hobby, that we understand that. That's why we like that, because there's that interpersonal dynamic that we love, that story that we love. But understanding that it wasn't the Union Army against the Confederate Army, that's the one time when Gettysburg came out, I realized, there was hundreds of different thousands of different regiments that I didn't know about. And that got me into history and researching the Civil War. And so from the value of the movie, it definitely was a good thing, right? But, so then growing up...
gateway drug.
Yeah, it was a gateway drug. It's the soft drug. But... then you get into history, you start reenacting, and you want to make a good impression, and you're learning what's right and what's wrong. Then you go back. I mean, I think it was 10 years. There's a decade when I started reenacting, and then I looked back and watched Gettysburg again, and I cringed. I was like, oh my goodness, how that's wrong. How could they do that?
Yeah.
So there's a value there. But there's also, from our take now, there's a lot of inaccuracies. So, I mean... Is that your take? What's your feel of the movie from the intent of the movie versus the authenticity of the movie?
I mean, I think the intent was they did it perfectly. I mean, they got a lot of fans, they got great reviews, and they got a lot of people interested in the Civil War and history. And I mean, that's the go-to whenever you think of, pardon me, Glory fans and all the other really good films, but that's the go-to film that I think of when we talk about the American Civil War. is Gettysburg. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
just because it's such a
definitely.
high profile, it has everything in it.
Exactly.
But once you get to reading more by the manuals and the books and a little bit more about maybe individual regimental histories or diaries and journals and primary sources, you find out that maybe that wasn't quite exactly how it happened.
Right. So let me start with the first inaccuracy that I guess that shocked me when I was a little bit older and I learned this. So we don't have any overlays or anything like this, like we will on some other inauthenticities. But though, when I realized that the 20th Maine didn't get reassigned to Cemetery Ridge, I was distraught. Because like in the movie, there's this humorous part that they get done fighting on the left flank on Little Round Top.
Oh, you're gonna have it easy now, and
I know you're gonna have the safest place on the field, right smack dab in the middle, right?
And then for those of us who already knew just a little bit about Gettysburg, you go, oh no, no, yeah,
exactly. And then in a way, I watched this movie as a kid. I'm like, oh man, like the 20th Maine is like the Forrest Gump of regiments, to where they seem to be always in the wrong place. And I got that impression from Gettysburg, the movie, right? Mm-hmm. And then when I found out, actually it was from a Gettysburg tour guide, that they didn't go in the center at all. They weren't involved with Pickett's charge at all. I was like, oh, what? That can't be. The movie said, but no. So I mean, that was the first inauthenticity that just kind of shocked me, and then of course it goes from there. So what was the one, if you pick one big thing before we start getting into the overlays and the specifics, what would you say?
Put me on the spot, why don't you? You didn't tell me you were going to ask me that. I don't know off the top of my head. I would say something that kind of crushed me was I don't know. I don't have an answer for you there.
You don't have it?
No, I'm sorry.
No? All right. So let's get in the first inauthenticity here.
Okay.
So we're going to watch the opening scene of the Buford stand, right? So where the Confederate marches in by column, and then they deploy, and then Buford's holding them off. All right. So let's go ahead and watch that here. So here they come. And so here, let's pause it right here. No, not right there. So sorry, there. All right, here we go. So let's pause it right there. Okay, so
good one.
This is shot right there. So one of the things we didn't show right now, but kind of starting with the artillery barrage, right? So it opens up with artillery. The feeling is good, but one of the things that is consistent throughout the movie is how they show artillery exploding. Right?
No, with the shell bursts or lack thereof.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because, I don't claim to be an expert in artillery by any means. That's not my forte. I just know a little bit about it. I used to work with the National Park Service, and we did demonstrations with the 12-pound mountain howitzer, which is a completely different story than all the other, big Civil War guns. But I knew enough in our talks and stuff. We could do a basic artillery program, and one thing that we always pointed out was that a good artillery crew, if they timed their fuses correctly, the shells are going to burst above their target and raining shrapnel down upon them. You're going to have the maximum effect of the rounds there. Versus you see in the footage, you just see all these explosions and geysers of dirt and dust going everywhere and
on the ground.
On the ground, and based on that background knowledge, it's like that's probably you didn't time those fuses well. It's we need to adjust that, so hopefully shortly thereafter they will start bursting above the air. And I don't know if they had the technology to do that necessarily in the films in the 90s that early on. I think there's a couple times where you do see shell bursts in the air, but it's not very often. And I think they shoot a couple signal flares, just like there's some shells streaking across the sky and the smoke and stuff. But the rest of it, all the special effects are on the ground. Yeah. And it's, geysers of smoke and dust and dirt and stuff. Yeah. Actually, one thing I was going to bring up too is these topics or these inaccuracies that we're going to be bringing up. Number one, I didn't want to bring up the Hollywood or the movie
issues that everyone has a problem with, like the beards, right? I don't want to talk about that. We know that's bad. I want to focus on the historical inaccuracies versus just the cheesiness of the acting, the cheesiness of the beards that were horrible. And one of the things, that kind of why I preface that, is talking about the artillery. You know, you kind of have to keep in mind of the technology back then, the money that they were spending back then. That was already an over-budget movie. You know, it's easy to just do ground shots versus, you know, light off air shots. You know, so, you know, again, we're trying to take that into account. But, you know, I want to say that we understand, and we're not discounting the movie, but it is an inauthenticity that may give the wrong impression from someone who's interested in artillery battles or artillery duels. So, yeah, something to keep in mind. So we'll continue watching this here. So they come in. Again, there's those ground shots, right?
Hustle up there, hustle up there.
All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so actually, real quick, before we talk about how bad these pistols are, one of the things I wanted to talk about actually were the deployment of the Confederate Army, right? So I can't go back and watch that video yet, but you know, the Confederate armies coming in the opening scene. They're coming in column of fours, I believe.
Yeah.
And so we got two options here. And especially when you read Hardy's tactics, you have two options. Either you're marching in column or you're marching in line. Both infantry and cavalry seem to be consistent on this, right? And obviously I'm not an infantry expert or anything like that.
They're relatively similar within reason.
Yes.
The idea is the same.
So based on that, you got your two options here. You have, if they're going to be coming down in column, then even that movie is, because they're coming down a column on the road. What's wrong with that?
They're completely exposed. Like, by the manual, regardless of which manual you look at, you always have some sort of advance guard and flankers to kind of screen and feel out any potential threats in the immediate area. And then, of course, if you know there is an opposition nearby, you have skirmishers put out.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, that allows you time to get into a line of battle. But as you can see, as we'll, I think later on here
right
in a
there.
second.
Right there.
Okay, well, this is the manual, but yeah, it says in the manual, you're going to have flankers, I think, skirmishers, and they are going to be at least, I think, 150 in the end to up to 400 yards in advance of the head of the column.
Yeah, well, one thing I want to put on here is that paragraph 137, it says, again, all manuals, they specify how you're marching, or is it line of battle, or is it in column, right? When I say line of battle, either it says in line or in column. And so here it opens up by saying, on the march, the column usually proceeds on the road, preceded by the advance guard, proportioned to the length of the column, usually about 1/10 of the whole force. And so if in the scene here, when they're coming down the road, then they should be, if they're going to call them, then they need flankers.
Yes.
But again, at the same time, especially based on that footage, I mean, they're like, 100 yards away from Buford's guys.
Who just run, like, they literally just ran upon the Union Army. Like, how do you not see that?
Exactly. And so they're running in. So they're not going to be, I mean, the column is an issue too. And so let's say they go in line of battle, then they're not going to be stacked up on the road. They're going to be spread out over on either side of the road, like they actually were in the real battle of Gettysburg. So, but they come in. I mean, that yes, for me, that kind of ruined the initial opening Buford battle because of that. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I mean, if you cut to the clip, they're completely exposing their entire left flank of the column.
Right there.
Yeah, I mean, but even before that, like the fence magically vaporized, and then let's go down this opening and go out into the field, and they just completely expose that side, and I'm definitely not up to standards, and I know there's been a lot of talk on the AC as far as deploying and such with this sort of a thing, so I'm not the expert on that by any means, but I'm just more miffed that there's no screening while you're going into line of battle. There's no skirmishers. There's
I've
no
heard the argument
flankers,
that that close to battle, the skirmishers would have come back in.
Well, yeah.
But
in theory, you'd
not
already
in that formation.
You'd already be in line of battle by that point,
right? Exactly. So again, one thing we on, and here's Buford here, but one thing we paused on that. Let's see here. Dealing with the videos here, but what we paused on was the pistols.
Oh yeah,
and the infantry and all that good stuff. So they're using pistols. Actually, the officers are. Let's see.
I think there's a couple of shots where you can see the troopers that are actually using pistols as well, which is kind of interesting considering that the Confederates, if based on how they spliced these segments of film footage,
right?
The enemy is within like 150 yards or something, and a little too close for comfort, but then it cuts to a scene where you'll see everyone's just unloading hell with their pistols.
Right.
And it kind of, if you really know what your history... Oh, pause it there, too. Cause
pause
another
it.
Point. Sorry, we're bouncing around all over here, folks, but there's just so much to talk about.
We're only the first 6 seconds of the battle, the first battle.
I know. Okay, so let's focus. Pistols. Pistols are really only good up to 50 yards, even if you're a super good shot.
Right.
And I don't know if we have that...
the overlay.
Overlay with the pistol ranges, and that was from...
so.
What is this from? This is from... is it Couts?
Oh, I think it's Cogden's.
Oh, this is Cogden's Cavalry Compendium, and it's talking about how to properly aim and shoot and your pistol and whatnot and reload.
Yeah, so this overlay here, actually, both above and below this overlay in Cogden's was talking about the use of and practice of the pistol and carbine. Basically you can read it all, but in Cogden's it basically says that
you didn't even cut it from the... I looked this up specifically for you last night, and you didn't even get the right photo. So it says basically that a good shot with Colt's revolver would be able to hit a man's head at 50 yards.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
That's pretty good. You can't
Cogden
even,
must have been a good shot.
Yeah, you can't even do that at a modern pistol range, unless you're like super well trained on everything and well practiced. But
even that Texas church shooting a couple weeks ago, everyone was amazed that guy took a headshot at 15-25 yards at that guy. And that was a modern pistol on a headshot 15 or 20 yards away, and that was an impressive shot. And here Cogden's actually talks about you should be able to hit a head of a man at 50 yards. I guess my point, going back to that audio clip,
they're too far to use pistols.
Yeah, they're too far to use, but way too far.
They're also giving the air that, oh crap, things are getting serious. We're using pistols now.
Yeah. Exactly. From the first opening, 30 seconds of the first battle here with Buford, you have a couple of 3 major inauthenticities from a tactical standpoint.
But then you see where we paused that, and that was clearly infantry.
Yes.
They did not splice that very well.
Before we even talk about that, let's talk about...
I'm jumping ahead again.
So far, let's just review. So, the scene opens with artillery. All the ground shots are going off. No air shots, okay? The Confederates come in by column, and if they are coming in by column, they should have flankers. But they shouldn't be coming in by column, at least at that range. And so then you should have a line of battle or something on either side of the road. Again, they didn't do that. Third inauthenticity was, again, going back to that clip, is you had the officers behind the troopers blazing away with their pistols, which was a secondary weapon. They should be leading. They should be commanding. They shouldn't
Probably
be
adjusting
firing.
sights and ranges and like, wait, no.
wait, what? I don't know.
Set your sights for 150 yards, not 300, or
they totally did that. Exactly. And so you have those inauthenticities, and then, like we said, what right there. Well, yeah,
kind of.
Kind of. So one of the things that we have an issue with was the infantry. So let's see if we can get back an infantry shot here. So if you notice that in this scene, before Reynolds and the Iron Brigade shows up, there are scenes right there. Pause it right there. There are scenes with infantry already in place.
Yeah, they're clearly using rammers, and the majority of Federal cavalry did not have muzzle loaders.
Exactly. And one thing that I actually recommend reading is Cavalry Carbines of the Civil War, a really good researched book that talks about, there's one chapter in it that really dives into Gettysburg and the minutia of the weapons that Buford's guys has. And of course, Hampton's and Custer's guys on East Cavalry Field. But for Buford's guys, I think there were a few infields there, but I mean they were all basically Sharps or Burnsides. There's some Merrills, Stars, exactly. And so now that is one of my beefs with some of the outtakes. Not outtakes, but some of the other Gettysburg footage that I couldn't find is pretty much everyone had Sharps. Now I thought I saw a Spencer in there, and I couldn't find it, so I didn't take a screenshot of that. But it would have been, from an authenticity standpoint, it would have been nice to have some Burnsides and Merrills and Stars and some unique stuff out there.
But the nice thing is they don't really cut it so that it's a close enough shot. You can't really tell what they're using. You just know it's a carbine. Which
is nice. Again, it goes back to the intent of the movie versus us sitting here picking it apart. Again, one of the things that we want to be clear is we're actually just having fun picking apart the inauthenticities, as a lot of you guys, especially voiced on the comments before the video even went live, that
there was some good ones.
That you guys hate the movie Gettysburg, and a lot of people can't go through it, can't get through the first battle. I mean, we're not even through the first battle, and there's already a lot of issues.
That's better than Gods and Generals. Come on.
100%, 100%, exactly. But it's still a good movie. I still like it. Like
I do too.
You open it up with saying that you actually still like the movie Gettysburg. I like it for what it is. Again, it's nostalgic. The fifth grade me got into history because of this movie.
Yeah.
And so don't think that we hate this movie. Don't think that we love it and think it's perfect. We're just sitting here picking apart a movie that we enjoy. It's entertaining, especially the beards. Just love the entertainment value. But, we're just picking apart the inauthenticities as kind of a fun activity here today. So, yeah. So, going back to that scene, as far as, let's see here. We don't have any overlays of that, do we?
No.
But, watch the rest of it here. You got the infantry firing away at like 100 yards. Oh, here we go. So this is looping over again. So this is the very beginning. Again, so you have the whole Confederate car marching in column, like we already said. It just looped over.
Oh, did you pause it, or is it?
Yeah, I paused it.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's not going. Play the film clip.
Where did it go? So again, we'll watch the whole thing through again, kind of review this here. So again, ground shots, cannon going off.
There's artillery battery duel going on.
Yeah.
Already, and the infantry's blindly marching in without any feelers, so to speak.
So again, coming down the road in column, right in front of the muzzle of the cannons.
Yay!
So that board drops, and there they go.
Yeah, the magic board drop.
So here, I love this. This kills me. They expose their entire flank to the line. So you see the infantry right there.
Yep,
they're loading muzzles. Right, all infantry. You'll see some blue chevrons here in a little bit. There you go.
Bedrolls.
Right there.
I think there's a couple of them had bedrolls.
All right. Again, there's your whole flank right there. Just getting mowed down.
And even if you're that close, though, like, wouldn't you be using canister if you're that close to the artillery?
Yeah, 100 yards.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you wouldn't be having... I'd be worried if I were a artilleryman with,
Right.
we're setting the fuses for 150 yards. Like,
That's like what, a tenth of a second. Not even that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm showing my ignorance with artillery. Yeah, so it's good old Buford.
Yeah, you can't beat Sam Elliott.
Right. So I mean, basically, that's our issues with the opening battle scene of Buford's Last Stand, right? And
Buford's Last Stand.
What did I say, Buford?
Yeah, you said Buford, but
I said Buford.
It was not his last stand; it was his first stand.
So I got Custer in my head now. I got some people texting me some Buford or some Custer stuff, but basically this opening battle scene again. The music, especially if you're ignorant, man, that opening scene is great. The battle is starting. This big battle of Gettysburg, the hole in the line, but within 20 seconds we have 8 different inauthenticities.
Yeah.
And just so you guys know, this live stream, we actually had to pare down our issues with the movie from like 50 items to 5. We just chose 5 today.
While you might think we do have a good time talking about this, nobody wants to hear 3 hours worth of commentary on a 1 hour clip.
Yeah.
Not even the full film, so.
Exactly.
But it's all good fun.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so next thing we're going to be talking about is one of the famous things that everyone loves about the movie Gettysburg, which is
the artillery barrage.
The artillery barrage. Yes. All right, let's watch it first and go through here.
Ah, the feels.
I love that scene.
Oh. You get some pretty good cinematic shots.
I was going to say, as a movie, this is pretty good, especially for 1993.
Yeah, and I don't think they're doing it yet, but there'll be a really wonderful shot where you see the whole Confederate artillery park, pretty
barrage,
much.
Yeah.
Not barrage, I don't know, park. Large grouping of artillery pieces. And
right.
It's just this beautiful arc into the distance, and the smoke kind of covers it up as it's moving
Right.
down the line.
Exactly.
We'll get there, but
so at the inauthenticity of the artillery barrage, what were your biggest issues with this?
one of the things that, and again, I'm not claiming to be an artillery expert, but if you look at how close the pieces are together and how close the limbers are, like, that's just screaming lots of explosions way too close for comfort. Like, if they manage to hit one of those limbers, that, like, with that last shot, there's like 10 yards between the trees. And I'm granted, I admit I'm a terrible judge of distance, and I still am trying to work on that. But like, even when you see those shots, the limbers are way too close to the guns on the line there. So
now, again, the reenactors that filmed Gettysburg, helped film Gettysburg.
Sure.
You know, these. I mean, I think that was the largest accumulation of cannons at one spot, at least at that point.
Since the original day, I'm sure.
I think so. I think actually the making of Gettysburg has that mention of that fact.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's true or not. Don't fact check me. But so what? Well, so let's say the artillerists that were there, because there's still a lot of people out there in the community that that were there that are still around.
Mm-hmm.
And so are we being too judgy here? Let's go back to that clip. You know, are they 14 yards apart? Because if I pause it and I go back to our overlay of the artillery manual here, so if you read the artillery manual of how a battery, or actually, at least how the guns are supposed to be placed, is 14 yards apart from gun to gun.
From the outside of the wheel to the outside of the next wheel.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
At least that's how I understand it. Again, I'm not really an artillery expert or an
What do you mean? When you watch
expert.
Gettysburg, everyone's an armchair general. We know our stuff.
We're all experts, right? So, you know, again, I'm not an infantry expert, not an artillery expert. I know this much about Federal cavalry. I don't even know anything about Red cavalry. Cannot, thank goodness, is helping me with that. But, you know, I don't know, but just looking at that right there, it looks like it's closer than 14 yards. And if you go back to the originals, if you take a look actually at this clip right here, or this photo, this is a real photo. I can't remember which battery or which regiment this is. Which battery it is. But, you have the guns right there in the front, guys manning it, and then you have the horses.
Yeah, that's the other thing that's missing in the movie is,
yes,
obviously for logistical purposes, and obviously there's so many horses that are trained to be in harness and all that with the limbers and near the guns and all that. It's probably a safety thing, I'm sure, but
right.
But horses never freak out near artillery. I don't know what you're talking about.
Actually, I will say this from a reenacting perspective. One thing I was more surprised than anything else, as far as getting your horses used to just battle in general, is they were. I guess it's easier to get them used to artillery
than small arms.
Yeah,
I was surprised at that as well.
Yeah. I mean, again, my very first large national reenactment was the 150th Shiloh, and they had Ruggles Battery. I think it was 60 guns at the 150th Shiloh, and it was pretty impressive. Again, of course, it's my first national event, and so you always remember your first, right? And we're sitting in front of the guns, a few hundred yards away, and you just felt that concussion, and even a few hundred yards away, I want to say was louder, or at least to my ears, than my pistol was. But I don't know if its concussion had been reduced by then or whatever, but getting him used to pistols and carbines off the back took longer and still not great.
Yeah.
Compared to getting him used to cannons.
Well, I noticed that with the horses that we took to Fort Blakely. I mean, the artillery was, firing away, and I don't remember the horses ever reacting. I mean, granted, we've been working with them for a while, but when we had to actually use the small arms while we were mounted, mine at least was noticeably freaking out more.
Well, I kind of ruined your horse.
Yeah, way to ruin poor Cody.
Yeah.
But
so that's a story for another time. Note to self: desensitization to a horse doesn't mean just shoot the muzzle over their ears 100 times.
What?
It gets worse.
Good times.
Good times. So going back to even this overlay right here. So this is a group here that's not deployed yet. Their guns are still hooked up.
You can see the caissons in the back. They have the limbers and the guns hooked up in the front. But each one, we'll cover this in a little bit. I keep jumping ahead. But,
no, you're good.
But there's at least 4 to 6 horses per wheeled article, whatever you're pulling around, regardless.
Exactly.
And that's a lot of horses. And then especially when you have, the largest concentration of artillery in the history of North America at this huge epic, battle that's going on, there's going to be a lot of horses and harnesses. But if you look at, and please cut to the footage again where we paused it, I think.
Right there.
There is once you get to there, you'll see a nice elevated shot once we get past the epic
cannonade,
the whumping of artillery there. There are no horses in sight.
Right there. Yeah.
And they're we were joking earlier because there's no harnesses, there's no horses. So somewhere there's a bunch of harnessed horses, in all their equipment, they're loose. But there's this huge remuda just behind the tree line there with thousands of horses just milling around while the artillery's doing their thing. And when they're all ready, then they can all go, and good luck trying to find your teams and get everyone back. But
that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a huge herd somewhere.
Yeah, so our biggest 2 issues with the cannonade. Now, again, keep in mind we had 50 major things wrong with the movie Gettysburg, and so even in the cannonade that we're talking about now, or even in the opening Buford scene that we previously talked about, there's dozens of other inaccuracies that we either didn't have time to research to overlay actually proof that shouldn't have been the case, because I don't want he said she said stuff. For instance, one of the issues that we have are the uniforms and the clothing of the rebels, right? So especially Buford's or in Pickett's charge, even the uniforms aren't quite what they should be. But since I'm not 100% up on finding proof and depots and issue documents for the rebels. I mean, I got all that for the Federals, but I can't find that for on the southern side. So that we didn't include that because I don't have overlays for it. But we have a lot of other issues with both the cannonade, the whole movie, as far as inauthenticities. But something to keep in mind. So again, going back to that shot of the cannonade. Behind there is nothing.
There's not even any caissons, which
no.
I think they talk about it like, they have to run up the rounds from the caissons to the limbers because they wanted them out of range for counter artillery or something like that. But,
so actually that brings me up. I'm going to go ahead and there's one clip. There's a Gettysburg tour guide. Not Matt Atkinson. Those of you who know Matt Atkinson, I love Matt Atkinson. In fact, I might actually make a fanboy page for him, on YouTube. Just clip all his highlights. I think there already is a Matt Atkinson page. I don't know. But it's not Matt Atkinson, but one of the other guys at the Gettysburg National Military Park was going through the requirements or I guess what was all entailed into the just what a battery with however many guns took as far as space and horses and manpower. So let's go ahead and actually go to that real quick.
Battery would also have a portable blacksmith shop known as a forge. So you're looking at a lot of logistics to support the fire of 6 cannons. So there are a lot of logistics as far as the artillery goes. Merely to be able to get out under heavy pressure, if we go back to that double canister with the Napoleons with the 12-pounders, 1,298 golf ball size balls every 60 seconds, which is about what you get out of an M60 machine gun in 1972. Making 3 ammunition boxes altogether and a stable 4-wheel vehicle. It is drawn about by 6 horses, as would this vehicle be. This has also got a little ball and hitch in the back here, which connects to the gun itself.
Actually, that's one thing I want to talk about too, is 6 horses per set.
And firing, you draw
not 4, not 2.
From the caisson,
6.
so that you always have
so
a
here's
full
talking about
chest
the
of ammunition to support the gun when the gun is by itself. And that's the way that works. Behind the caisson,
otherwise you have
you would have what's called a
6
battery
rounds
wagon,
to
which
use
also has 6 horses.
In one of those
for each
ammo
gun, you'd have
crates,
6
if I remember
horses for the
correctly.
battery wagon, 6 horses for the
I might be
caisson,
wrong.
6 horses for the limber. So you're looking for a lot of horses, a lot of teamsters, the drivers for that. Each battery would also have a portable blacksmith shop known as a forge. So you're looking at a lot of logistics to support the fire of 6 cannons. So.
All right, so we'll stop that. And basically, there's at least 3 sets of 6 horses. Kind of a big deal. And so when you're looking at 3 sets of 6 horses, let's say 4 horses, we'll assume some died or whatever. Of course, running them into the ground. I know that's one thing that we've experienced in our longer rides is easy dying. It's easy to run our horses into the ground. I mean, in our week-long events, covering 25, 30 miles a day, by day 3, you're sucking up the cinch past any holes you have, right? Mm-hmm. That's one thing that we've experienced, and it's easy. If you go more than 3 or 4 days hard, you're going to run your horses in the ground.
Maybe that's what happened. That's why they don't have any horses. At the same time, simultaneously, the entire artillery corps of the Army of Northern Virginia just ran their horses into the ground, and now they have nothing. They managed to get to the battle, but now they don't have anything to move them. So that's why it was so important that Jeb Stuart got back, because he was rounding up all the loose stock in the area so they could actually move the guns again.
Right, yeah. That's my theory. Don't even get me talking about Jeb Stuart, right? With the scene with Stuart and Lee, and that's a whole other fun research article that is there. Yeah, we'll skip that.
Okay.
So if you go back to how many horses, again, looking at this video here, there is no horses inside. In fact, there's not even the other caissons or limbers. Yeah. So that's how ignorant I am with the artillery. But they have one limber in the back, but there's no caissons. There's nothing. I guess. Well, you got a couple there, but it's not the mass group of logistics behind these guns that it needs to be. And again, if there's anyone out there who are knowledgeable in artillery, if Dan's out there watching, definitely let me know if I'm totally wrong. But it should be a lot of horses, a lot more logistics, a lot more activity, behind the guns. Not directly behind, because there's spacing issues that you have to follow and make sure for safety reasons. But there's nothing. I mean, from the guns to the limbers to the trees, there's nothing in between. So I don't know, that one of the issues with the cannonade.
And didn't they have? I don't think they had full crews working the guns either. They had like 4 to 6 people tops.
Well,
and don't you need that? Like 8 to 10 people to? I think you're right.
There's some of these guns that like 3 people are. Yeah, right there. Stop. Oh, can you that lower left hand?
Yeah, there's like
right
3 people
there
on that one.
Yeah, I guess the second full visible gun from the left.
Sure.
It looks like there's 2 guys running that.
But at the same time, I mean, also this goes back to movie logistics. Okay, we have to have the largest concentration of artillery. How many people are officially trained and know what they're doing safely to fire these pieces?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I kind of wish that they would have set it up differently. So if you do have a couple guns with the crews are short-handed, put them way down on the end, so all you see is like a couple guys and then smoke, and the guys up close, you'll see a full crew actually working, doing their thing.
You're right.
But,
I mean,
but that's just limitations.
It goes back to the logistics between the movie world and the historic authenticity world, and this is why it's fun to pick apart these movies. It's fun to be an armchair quarterback, armchair historian, armchair general.
Thank you.
Got to get that right. But, it's fun to pick apart these movies because, yeah, you're right. I mean, I think one of my friends, Scott Romine, on our Facebook group posted when we announced the live group or the live chat or live stream, he commented like, hey, it's a cinematic movie. Off of a fictional novel.
Yeah, it's meant for entertainment. Like it was researched very in depth. Something like, I don't know how that's the right phrase, but it was very time. I can't even talk anymore. Basically, there's a lot of time spent trying to research it, so it's not just some frou-frou, entertainment blouse tearing novel.
I think that's what makes it different and why.
But the feels are there.
Yeah,
I think he's adding the humanity side of it maybe a little, because I mean I like listening to the audiobook and I've read The Killer Angels a couple times. And
there's a reason it was a very popular book.
Yeah,
so it's there, and I think because it's so authentic in some ways, that then there's now an expectation for, I guess, more authenticity versus cinematic. What do they call it? Liberty, or whatever they call it. But so again. We're having fun here, but again, you're looking at these this artillery barrage. There's nothing behind that at all. So interesting. Okay, moving on. Okay, so with we've talked about the artillery barrage. Before that was Buford's. I keep wanting to say Last Stand. Buford's.
You've been out west too long.
I know. Buford's initial stand, his hold of McPherson's Ridge, and McPherson, not McPherson. There's no fear in McPherson. So yeah,
very nice.
A little trivia for you, but yeah. So the next thing we're going to talk about is just kind of a quick little thing. So if you actually take a look at the take a look at the opening scene of...
It might be a little glitchy. I don't know how it looks on the internet, but...
So if you take a look, this is where Chamberlain sits down and talks with the second main guy. So he's coming in, they're talking, and, he's talking about their grievances. I got grievances, Colonel. Right? What's he say?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They aren't fit to pour piss out of a boot.
How many... I've been through 11 different engagements. How many have you been in? Not that many.
Yeah.
So, anyways, the one thing we're picking apart in this still shot here is if you look, they are not underneath a tent. They're not underneath an awning.
Or a fly.
Or a rain fly.
Yeah.
They're underneath a brush arbor. Basically, a structure that people
build for shade.
Yeah, basically build for shade here, and it's just poles with vegetation over for shade. It's nice and easy to build.
Which is nice in the heat, and yes, it is late June, July, early July. And it's going to be warm, obviously, but when you actually think about it, the timing. And they've just done this huge announcement at the beginning of the film that, the Army of the Potomac is, frantically trying to catch up to the Army of Northern Virginia that's somewhere on the other side of the Blue Ridge Mountains and da-da-da-da. They're hustling. They're not really sitting around for, ever enough to justify building an entire brush arbor for, like, one day's camp.
Right.
And granted, brush arbors are nice. I have never been able to use one. Like, I've seen them in use, but I'm always running around somewhere and I'm not able to actually enjoy it. But but for the way that they're telling that story, the 20th Maine is on the move and they're constantly going somewhere. But it must be nice to just be the colonel and be like, you want a detachment to go and have a detail, build a brush arbor for me, and we'll use it for one day, and then we're going to march on the next day and be gone and not use it ever again.
And so this overlay here, this is, if you actually search the Library of Congress, unfortunately they don't have it tagged as brush arbors, but if you just search camps or anything like that, or tintage, you run across, there's a few pictures you can find with brush arbors. And in every case, at least that can be tied down to a person, place, or time period, they're all in, or not, I should say all of them because I don't know for sure, but the ones I'm aware of are in kind of fixed, static kind of camps.
You're there for a while.
Yeah, you're there for a while. Exactly. There's a lot of Petersburg stuff, but this is one picture on the left-hand side of the screen. There was that brush arbor there. They existed. That's one thing that is true. But at the same time, going back to going back to this clip right here, you have, the Chamberlains and the second Maine guy, or Buckland, what's his name? Private Buckland?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. Underneath this big brush arbor. I mean, it looks awesome, but I don't think they would have built that, used the effort, time, and all that while they're marching, 20, 30 miles a day. I mean, a few scenes later, or sorry, more than a few scenes, but maybe the next, couple, 3, 10 scenes later, they're marching down the road and talking about, hey, we've marched 25 miles today, 25 miles yesterday, or whatever it was. And they, they're mentioning about the past week, basically, they've been marching over and over and over. So they would not have time to build a brush arbor.
Or the energy, I would expect. But, I mean, you do what you're told, but still, that's pretty ballsy of your officer to be like, build me a brush arbor, and then we're going to move on.
Right?
Oh, you jerk.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So it's a small kind of fun issue here. Again, they did exist. We have this original picture here. They did exist, but probably not on the Gettysburg campaign one day before the battle.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to bet that. So
maybe they were being nice for the next regiment that was behind them, or for that night of camping.
Right. Maybe.
Brownie points. I don't know.
You can always what if everything, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So the last thing we have. Okay. So if you remember, my first biggest recognition of inauthenticity in the movie was that the 20th Maine wasn't at Pickett's Charge, right? The second biggest issue that I had with Gettysburg, once I realized the true story, was that Sergeant Killrain, with his wonderful Irish accent, or is it Scottish? I don't know.
Don't tell me you're saying that's Scottish. I'm going to slap you. Sergeant Killrain. I'm not even doing it. Never mind.
Sergeant Killrain. Kilrain comes in, and I'll pause it right there. he comes in opening scene of the 20th Maine, and he's acting like, I don't know, orderly or
a striker, as
yeah,
they were
right?
called, or yeah.
And so you have that going on, but at the same time, during the battle scenes, he's taking a place in the formation. So you can't have one or the other. So we got two issues here with Sergeant Kilrain. Number one, he's actually not a real person. So I like I said, I thought I had an overlay of the 20th Maine muster rolls, but I don't. But Killrain was not a real person at all. And with that, you wonder, what did they show at the opening, like not credits, but the opening introduction of the movie?
Credits, yeah.
So you got this right here.
Yeah, Kevin Conway played.
Conway.
This, or did you jump ahead?
Yeah, I jumped ahead. Let me rewind here. So opens up with Gettysburg. Okay. All right. So the very first person is Kilrain. So it shows this dude right here. Let me pause it right there.
Some random guy played by Kevin Conway. Like, we don't really have an actual photograph of him. We'll just grab some close-up picture of a headshot of some guy, and
so
it's Kilrain.
So that's the question. So the introduction of the movie is, here's an original photo. Here's here's the, I guess, the real-time person, the actor who's playing this original person. And so you have, Chamberlain, and you have Longstreet and Lee, and all these people and the actors who play them. But then when you realize Kilrain was not a real person, he didn't exist. If you look at the muster rolls in the 20th Maine, he's not in there, especially at that rank, or really, he's not in there. Then you're looking around, and you go back to the opening credits or the title pages of the movie, and he's the first person with an original picture. And then Kevin Conway.
Maybe they hoped you weren't paying attention. They snuck it in real quick. So then when you actually did notice, oh, wow, they actually are doing a historic photo, then it's the actual photo of the majority of the people in there.
Exactly. So the question is, like he said, who's the person?
Who is that masked man?
It's not Kilrain. Yeah, right.
There should be a whole side documentary of, like, who was the mystery Kilrain character? Like,
right?
I'd like to see that.
So, now, I haven't researched this, but I'm assuming that person is a member of the 20th Maine and maybe was a sergeant major or something.
Probably.
Who knows? And maybe took some liberties on names and times, and maybe combined 2 or 3 people into one sergeant, or sergeant major. But the whole issue remains, he's not a real person, right?
And he has a completely fictitious role in the regiment, which, because I was researching this last night, so I knew what I was talking about when I got to be on here today. But it's fascinating, because who wouldn't honestly love to be gently awoken by your sergeant major with a gentle, rolling Irish brogue and a steaming pot of coffee all ready for you? But, I mean, that's the way to go, right?
Right.
Is that not normal?
So,
then you look at the actual role in, it's Kautz's Kautz's manual about the role of this sergeant major, and it goes through and in detail describes what exactly these guys are supposed to be doing.
Oh, that's not it.
No, that is not it. Is it? Where did you put that?
Apparently, I forgot to put it.
You forgot to. No, Kautz's Customs of Service. Is that it, or is that something else? Go back to that one.
That might be it. There we go.
See if we can pull that up.
No, that's
not it. You did forget it.
I did forget it.
That hurts.
I'm
Steven, sorry. That really hurts me. I worked so hard for that. But anyway, from what I remember, the role of the sergeant major, and they go into great detail to describe this, but it's basically, you're in charge of all the other sergeants, you're in charge of all the different company books, you are in charge of the company clerk and doing all the paperwork, and you're busy doing all sorts of stuff. And I mean, we've seen that at some of the campaigner events. The sergeant major is not just standing around all the time. Okay, but
maybe he is.
Maybe he is. But the good ones, they're busy. They have a job that they're attending to. And also, it was interesting when the regimental band, if the band what is the right term? Is it the bandmaster or the principal musician? I guess.
Right, yeah.
Who, if they're not available, the sergeant major is actually supposed to step in, which was interesting. I did not know that.
That is interesting.
But, are you trying to pull that up onto
Yep.
the... Okay, let's see if we can get this.
There we go. There it is.
Okay, that is really small from down here. So
Sorry, guys.
yeah, Oh, and also coordinates the guard and fatigue details as well. So you can read that there.
Well, actually, let's just go over it real quick.
All right, fine.
Fine. So yeah, paragraph 541, it says the sergeant major is the ranking non-commissioned officer of the regiment. He is appointed by the regimental commander. Each regiment is in service is entitled to one sergeant major. And the 9 new regiments, so keep going on. The sergeant major assists the adjutant in performance of his duties. So he assists the adjutant. He makes the details for the guard, fatigue, etc. under his direction, parades them, verifies the number required from each company, and sees that they are properly equipped for duty for which they have been detailed. He superintends the clerk and assists him in making out the various returns, the rolls, the reports required, and in keeping the books and records of the regiment. He's in charge of all that, right? A lot of paperwork, a lot of documentation here.
And all the other sergeants.
Yeah. He
And corporals and various details for guard, fatigue, detachments, etc. And is responsible that those duties are da-da-da-da. All right, fine. Sorry, I wandered off. I had to go. I can't read from down here.
So paragraph 544, he keeps the roster of the sergeants, the corporals, and the various details for the guard, fatigue, detachments, and is responsible. These duties are equally required from the various companies. He generally keeps the time and the headquarters and sees the musicians detailed for the purpose at headquarters and sounds the calls for proper times. So the whole point is Sergeant Kilrain is
not doing his job as required.
That's the whole point. Nothing. You go into Couts and the customs of service for NCOs or even commissioned officers, lots of paperwork. Paperwork is a huge thing. And Killrain does nothing of that. In fact, in Gods and Generals, he basically says the duty of the sergeant is to, show off if he wants to by firing, right? That's a stupid reference. But
nice gentlemanly thing to do of him.
Yes.
I can't remember. Is he just a sergeant or is he a sergeant major?
Oh, I thought he was a sergeant major.
I thought he was, but now I'm having second thoughts and I'm panicking. But
well, either way,
because he must in Gods and Generals he was a sergeant, I think. He was a line sergeant, I thought, or maybe a first sergeant. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go back and watch all this again. But
again?
Can you go back to the footage of the beginning? Because maybe the character. Yeah, I know it's just a headshot.
Let's see what we got here. Colonel Darling.
I don't think we're gonna.
Oh, he's got his overcoat on.
We're not gonna see any. No, I mean the Gettysburg intro.
Oh no, I don't think so. Let's go look.
Do we really? Can't see. Okay, so
no.
I can't remember. No, because the sergeant major was the one that couldn't breathe, like at Little Round Top.
Oh, Little Round Top.
Was that the... now I'm getting all my sergeants mixed up in the movie.
Apparently we didn't do a homework very
We're going to have to go watch this. But anyway, there's some bonus information on sergeant majors in their role in the military. But
I get the
either
point
way,
is
he's acting as a striker instead of an actual sergeant. Whatever type of sergeant he is, he's not doing what he's supposed to, and he's coddling the officer.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing last time we were researching, apparently we should have taken one last look at his shoulder, see what type of chevron. Now that I'm second guessing it, but either way, if you go through Couts' customs of service for NCOs, whether it's from sergeant major or first sergeant all the way down to the last sergeant, he's not doing his job. That's the whole point, right? Mm-hmm. So again, kind of closing out with our issues with the movie Gettysburg. Again, 5 major points that we have out of the dozens or at least 50 established issues that we have with the movie. The ending with this last one is Kilrain, number 1, wasn't a real guy. They portray him as one, especially in the opening credits where they have the original picture and Conway next to him.
You're not supposed to know that.
Yeah, right. You're not supposed to know he's not a real character. And then, of course, if he is a real character, he's not doing his duty. So whether he's directly involved with staff or, dealing with the colonel, then he wouldn't necessarily be in the line in battle. So, again, it goes back to there's a lot of what ifs. There's a lot of, in the Battle of Little Round Top, there's a lot of variation there.
And there's a lot of times you can play devil's advocate as well.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
So we were talking about the bedrolls and stuff, and
right.
In the first day, you see is it Ewell's Corps coming in,
yeah.
And there's only a couple guys that have bedrolls, and so you made the argument that it's like, oh, well, they don't have any of their trappings, there's no blankets, there's no knapsacks or anything, but we all know that there are numerous times where you were ordered to leave your pile of knapsacks and stuff for the regiment before you go into combat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
But they don't show that, and you could just argue that, well, if they're behind that tree line, there's just this giant pile of knapsacks.
Right.
So there's a lot of what ifs.
Yeah. Oh, there definitely is. So, anyways, so kind of summing up the live stream here and the issues with Gettysburg. So, number one, we kind of opened up with that Buford scene and the artillery shots, how they were on the ground primarily, not in the air primarily. How the Confederate columns came in to deploy, not quite right. And then you had infantry in the scene, and like from an inauthenticity standpoint, you can argue, well, that's just a movie editing cut thing.
Yeah, they didn't pick the right shot for that.
Right, because maybe there was part of the Iron Brigade when they came in, they just used that footage before they were supposed to come in. So there's a movie editing order thing. But either way, in the movie, you got infantry, like obvious, I'm not saying heavy infantry, but you got obvious infantry fighting where cavalry should have been. So that's another issue. You have the cavalry officers firing away their pistols at distances they really shouldn't have been. Now, one good thing, we didn't really talk about this, is I did like in the background when Buford was looking through the glasses, they did have a couple sets of 3 horses linked together, kind of rotating around.
Mm-hmm. But it's only one guy with 3 linked horses. It's
Right.
not like there's a whole, the rest of the company or whatever
Right.
station in that section. It's just
Exactly.
the one guy running back and forth with 3 horses in tow.
Yeah.
And then it's just busy movie stuff, but
Yeah.
they tried.
They tried.
Good for
So
them.
it was good. They got a couple of wagons in the background. It's good stuff. But, so we have, those inauthenticities. And then we went to the artillery barrage. And with the artillery barrage, the 2 biggest things we had is that, number one, the spacing. Maybe we're wrong. I mean, maybe because of the angle of the camera, they were 14 yards apart or even more.
Sure.
But it just seems that there was way closer than that.
But even more important, I think, is the fact that there's no harnesses, there's no horses,
Exactly.
there's no caissons.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, exactly, and that's the whole point. Is again going back to this photo. They're deployed. Now, there's other better photos out there, but like in this one, they're deployed, and then they're right behind them. Now, granted, this is for a photo, so the spacing is not quite right. Again, in this photo, so there's a lot of what ifs with this photo as well.
Context is key.
Context is key. No, and that's one of the things from a historical reenacting perspective or historian standpoint is that everything is in context. Actually, I got sick of people's excuses in original photographs saying, "Oh, that was a prop." Like it got to the point where I'd look and research these things and look at the forums and look at the comments below these photos. And everyone would say,
"There's this epic prop house somewhere."
Yeah, right. No,
why can't I get
right.
a photo with them? No.
And that comment derives from there were a lot of photographers that you would have props, whether it was a pistol like a Remington or some big old Bowie knives, or some signage, obviously the background drapery or the paintings in the background. But there's a lot of props used in photographs. So yeah, from a context, we need to know that, especially in the time period, every photograph was basically staged. So even in this photograph that we have of the artillery, that that is a staged photograph. So they could have, again, arguably in the context, moved everything up closer into the shot of the camera, but still, or not, right? Because there's a lot of photographs of batteries deployed, or even just one gun deployed with nothing in the background. So you can maybe you can use that as proof as Gettysburg is accurate. But again, context is key, right? And that's all we're saying. And it's go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, like, it's nice to just kind of ponder and question, like, even if you're completely wrong, and which we very well might be for some of these points that we've talked about, but it's a discussion point. It gives you a chance to learn something that you may not have and continue a discussion. And so in the future, then when we actually do a well-researched stuff and do living history presentations for the public, we know what we're talking about, and we're providing the right info. So.
Well, I think that's one thing, especially as a historian or living historian, reenactor, or whatever tie to history.
And also, that's not that I'm saying that by watching Gettysburg, you should use that as a source for doing public presentations either. I'm not saying that. So,
I'm glad you correct yours. So,
sorry,
for sure. No, but I think actually that's one way that, especially for tour guides or even the national park guides, is knowing all the nuances, so you can argue both sides. That usually the people I respect the most, or that I view have the most knowledge, or the people I've talked to that, man, they know a lot, is they can argue both sides. They can say, yeah, Gettysburg is a good movie for this, this, and this, and Gettysburg sucks because of this, this, and this. And being able to argue both sides and have the understanding the nuances. There's good things, there's bad things. You can't just outright dismiss it completely, because there are good aspects. But also there's a lot of misinterpretation. Or again, I really thought the 20th Maine was at Pickett's Charge, and it destroyed me as a kid when I found that out. But it's something to keep in mind. So let's close with kind of our overall thoughts. Again, whether we get to the other 45 issues that we have written down for the movie Gettysburg or not, and we're just having fun with this live stream, and hope you guys are having fun. Appreciate it.
We're really sorry if you're miserable and like just
I'm sure they've dropped out by now. Yeah, but what's our overall take of the movie then? I mean, we only talked about the opening scene of Buford and the opening cannonade of Pickett's Charge. That's all we've talked about in the entire movie. Overall, what's your feeling of the movie Gettysburg then?
I still love it. There might be parts where there's poor acting or there's some inaccuracies and stuff, but it's the feels that really drive it home. I mean, it closes with Tom Chamberlain and
which didn't happen.
Yeah, which didn't happen, but who cares?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, they hug on the end of the battlefield, and it's over, and it starts to rain, and the end. And then they do little after credits. Lee slowly withdrew back to the south, and the war continued for another couple years, and
Lee withered away.
Yeah,
just like the trilogy did.
Yeah. Anyway, it provided that spark for a lot of people, that it ignited that passion for history, or even added to maybe what they already had, and it encouraged something more than what you already had. I mean, you can read books. You can say, hey, that was a pretty good movie. I kind of like that. And now you can go and maybe get a book, or you watch some more movies, watch some documentaries, and you start talking with people, and you can get a dialogue going, and you actually find out that, as with many different cases in history, the actual stories of what did happen was much more interesting than the fictitious writings for entertainment that did occur.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I would focus on how much of an impact the movie Gettysburg would have. Was it's not the most authentic, but it's enough that, and they put enough resources into it that it really excited a lot of people about history, which is something that doesn't always happen, especially in the past.
No, exactly.
Because, I mean, how many people have you talked to where they go through school, and especially how they used to teach history, you're just lectured dates and, rambling on and on and on, and it's miserable. But it's the actual stories and the connections of what's going on that really make it cool.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I feel I'm rambling, but sorry.
No, you're good. That's good.
The feels.
The feels. It gets me in the feels. All right. So with that, actually, that's pretty much all we have. We've been going for a little bit more, an hour, so sorry. Thanks for those who've held on. So if you guys want, real quick, do we want to take some comments out of the chat window here?
I haven't been watching the chat
you haven't
window
watched
at
it?
all. So.
One of the things I've been looking at, and I saw, is one of the complaints was that the battlefield would have been significantly more smoky than it showed in the movie, right? As far as the cannonade and...
You got to hide the monuments and the cars and stuff.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So that's actually one thing that I agree with, and we didn't even talk about. Actually, that's not even in one of the 50 things we wrote down, is how non-smoky the battlefield was. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on that?
So, wait, what was the point? That it was too smoky, or it was not smoky
enough?
No,
the point was that in the movie, it doesn't show it as smoky as it would have been in real life. Because basically you see the smoke of the gun, and that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Versus, even in reenactments we're at, you get 10, 15 guns going off. I mean, the entire valley, especially in the morning, early morning or late evening.
With the humidity levels of back east, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
It'll sit around and... So, I think part of that was more of a Hollywood thing, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, I'm just throwing out my initial thoughts right now, but that's, you can't see what's going on if there's smoke in front of the camera and between you and whatever you're trying to film. So it would look really cool, but at the same time, you're just going to see a wall of smoke.
Yeah, exactly.
So
good deal.
What else do we got?
I will call that good, because we're going on for an hour and 11 minutes.
It was fun while it lasted.
Well, with that, guys, I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning into our first live stream. I saw a couple comments. It's a little bit glitchy with our overlay video, so we'll work on that. Appreciate you guys watching, and of course, ride hard.
Ride hard.
See you guys.